It's just almost like a perfect movie.
Definitely an essential.
So about this movie,
yes.
Let's talk a little about when they were making it.
Well, I had read that when Billy Wilder and his partner, Charles Brackett, were writing it, developing this story, this idea that they had to hide it from the studio, what they were doing, that they were writing a film about Hollywood,
right.
which the studio would not have wanted them to do. So they called...
Because it was negative about the industry.
It was negative, you know, it's a brutal industry, let's face it. And so they called this film a can of beans, and that's what it was called, all the way up to the time that they were shooting. I guess at one point they had to show the studio the screenplay because it had to be green lit, but he kept it a secret as long as he could.
Yeah.
And it's so haunted, and it's so filled full of sort of decay from the very beginning. When he's there and he's in this house and he sees that there's from a distance, there's a burial of her pet monkey. And then he goes into the house and the wind is blowing a tune through the pipe organ, and he's handed this screenplay that she's written for him to read that's just dreadful. So it's like filled with decay.
Right. And we have to say that at that time, I mean, we're used to that kind of story now, but at that time, movies like that simply didn't exist. That were that negative
today,
and that dark.
They don't make it with this kind of style.
Right.
This degree of nuance and talent, and what Billy Wilder.
And you know, when I went to California, there were Norma Desmonds around in Hollywood when I went out there in the early '60s.
Really?
You know, the people from
I'm
that
sure there were. Yes.
silent screen era were still around.
Yeah.
And
Just
still
sort of
Mae
haunting
Murray
you.
and others that were still, you know, kind of living in the past.
Yeah. Well, and then some of them moved on and just, you know, grew older and
right.
were, you know, accepted the passing of an era and you know, moving. I mean, look at what Lillian Gish did. She came from the silent
right.
era, and she moved into film.
Right.
Beautiful.
Well, so Gloria Swanson.
And so did
in
Gloria
real life.
Swanson. Well, she did move on beautifully in real life, but she didn't really continue in film the way Lillian Gish.
She was stuck in that silent screen acting thing.
Yeah.
You know, big gestures
That's
and all
what
that.
we've been talking about, the styles of acting and the actors who are able to be in one era and then transition as the styles change into another era. And I think Lillian Gish is such an example of being able to transition.
Right. So moving on.
Yes.
I love this movie. Moving on, stay with us for a preview of next week's edition of The Essentials. Here comes Mr. Jordan, 1941.
Here we have a stable of really wonderful actors. Edward Everett Horton.
I don't think anybody was better on film than Claude Rains.
James Gleason is just fabulous in this.
Well, thanks.
Here Comes Mr. Jordan was a very popular movie in 1941 and received 7 Academy Award nominations. From 1941, Here Comes Mr. Jordan. That's next Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can find out more at tcm.com/essentials. Thanks for joining us for The Essentials.
Turner Classic Movie.